Hello, I'm Thalie Martini, CEO of Breast Cancer UK, and welcome to the Be Well podcast. Today, I'm talking to a Team GB Olympic champion and twice world record breaker. Now, with a raft of championship medals to her name, my guest is a woman of many talents. She started out in the pool competing at country level, but then moved to national cycling in her teens, stepping up to the Great Britain Cycling Team Senior Academy within a year of joining. Now, I'm also told that she's a keen mathematician, which is very interesting, alongside being a world track champion in the team sprint. And she herself admits that it was thanks to her fabulous quads that she knew from a young age that being a sprinter was her destiny. Now, my guest draws her inspiration from her beloved father, Nigel, who was a cycling legend himself, representing Great Britain at the 1996 and the 2000 Paralympic Games. Now, her dad tragically passed away in 2021, and at Paris 24, she stormed to gold in his honour, winning the women's team sprint in a new world record time with her teammates Emma Finucane and Katie Marchant. Now, she was recently awarded an NBE in the 2025 New Year's Honours. Now, there's a lot that we can learn from my guest, from how to deal with grief through to how to stay motivated to achieve our goals and to stay in top physical form, something we care a lot here at Breast Cancer UK. So it really is an honour for me to welcome you today, Sophie Capewell, to our podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sophie, it's really great to have you today. And my first question really is going to be about this amazing year that you've had. You are a holder of an Olympic medal, a world champion, and you've got an MBE. How does it all feel? How does it feel to have achieved so much success at such a young age and at an international level?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I still have to pinch myself sometimes. It doesn't quite feel real, especially seeing my name with MBE afterwards. It's pretty special. I think it's been a whirlwind, but at the same time, it's especially the Olympic and world medal. It's something that I've always worked towards. So it's very gratifying. And I feel very proud of myself that I've got to this position and basically fulfilled a lot of my dreams, which is pretty cool.
Incredible. And have you always been very competitive?
Yes, extremely competitive from a very young age. If you ask my sister or my family, they would soundly agree with me, I think. We used to go on walks as a family and I always had to walk a few steps in front of everyone. That's the level we started with. So I think I found the right career path.
Yeah, and coming from a cycling family and your father's career as a Paralympian, that must have had a real impact on you. Did that really influence you growing up, both on a personal and a professional level? Yeah,
definitely. I think sport was always in mine and my sister's futures kind of thing. Growing up, we did every sport we could. As you mentioned earlier, I used to swim. We used to run with the school. Every time the school said, we've got a game going on and we need some people, my hand would shoot up and we'd be doing all of them, like netball and rounders and everything like that. So I think sport was kind of the big influence that my dad had because he had such a passion for sport and coming from sport. But then in the cycling as well, he had a wealth of knowledge that he could pass on to us, I suppose you could say. And yeah, it was really nice to have that level of support and almost the guidance growing up in that sport too.
So he really has a legacy and had a legacy for you. And how did you respond to that? Did it make you feel that you wanted to achieve the same thing, or were you feeling kind of a bit daunted by, trying to achieve as much as him?
I think there was never a pressure with it. My dad has a really lovely legacy, and if you ask a lot, he was quite well known in the cycling world. So if you ask many people, they'd be like, oh, we love Nigel. And it was never kind of about him being super successful. Yes, he was very good at what he did, and he unfortunately only got fourth, missing out by a bronze medal by the smallest of margins. And he was amazing in that sense. But what spoke bigger to his legacy was the kind of person he was. He could see and spot talent in young people, and he had a way of bringing out a joy in what they were doing and a determination that they didn't really know that they had. And he could inspire anybody. When he went off on one of his, we used to say he used to rant, but it wasn't really rant. He was just trying to help people. And I think that was a big part of who he was, alongside the way he used to think about things and try and find a path forward. So I feel like that's the kind of way I want to carry on what my dad did. And yeah, I think in the short grief after he passed away, I think I didn't really know what that was, but now I'm pretty certain that I think I'm doing him proud.
And, you have spoken quite openly about the experience you've had in losing your dad and your grief for him, as well as the mixed emotions that you had during the Paris Olympics. And so given the special connections that you've shared with your dad through cycling, do you think the sport itself has the potential to help with the healing process?
Yeah, massively. So because for those who don't know, my dad was ill for about 9 months after we knew that he was going to pass. So the grieving process had already started. And during that time, I was spreading my time between Manchester and back home with the family. And so when I was not with him and the family, I was away doing my job at the time. But it wasn't just my job at the time. It was a really good distraction. It was a place where your brain can switch off and you can find that freedom and that joy from what you're doing. And I found that really freeing. And I think I was really lucky. Not everyone has that because obviously not everyone has a job where they can just do a sport kind of thing. But yeah, I was really fortunate in that. It was hard at the same time because what comes with professional sport is there's a demand and a pressure and there's a constant almost conveyor belt that you have to stay on to keep in the game and to keep competitive and to keep your spot on the squad, basically. So there was always that. And that was also the year of Tokyo Olympics because it'd been pushed back with COVID. And I was training as the reserve for an Olympics and at the same time like heavily grieving somebody who was still alive. So very, very disorientating time. But at the same time, sport was still something I really enjoyed and gave me a lot of freedom and almost gave me that headspace to stay sane to a certain degree at least.
Yeah, and do you feel that staying active has that kind of positive impact on your mental health in terms of how you able to manage all these competing complexities in life?
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone has a reason for doing sports if you ask the people who are involved in it. Some people feel like they've achieved something, whether that's just going out and doing a bit of exercise and afterwards they feel good about themselves because they've done something that's healthy for them and good for them. Other people, that time that they exercise, it's when your brain can go quiet. I don't really know why it works like that, but it's really nice. I go on a road ride at the weekend and my brain goes a lot quieter. It's very busy normally, but I get to enjoy being in the moment for maybe a couple of hours at a time, which is it's quite nice and almost meditative. And then there's the other thing there's a big social side that you can have in sport. And I think that is a great either distraction or you just find joy in it. So there's a lot to it that I think is really beneficial.
Yeah, and speaking of having kind of a quiet brain when you're out cycling on the weekend, what actually happens in your head when you're competing? Because you are a sprinter.
Yes.
So maybe explain to us what that means, what a sprinter does, and then, what happens in that moment when you're just really pushing hard?
Yeah, so I am a sprinter on the track. So there are four events that we do. There's a team sprint, which is the one we won the medal in, where there's 3 of us who line up on the track. And the first person does a lap and we follow that person and then they peel out the way. Then I do the second lap and peel out the way and then my teammate finishes it off. And it's only 3 laps and it's short and fast and it's basically first team over the line wins. Very straightforward in your head, but there's a lot that kind of
maybe it's straightforward because you're a mathematician.
Yeah,
you need to be a mathematician.
I mean, it's 3 laps and she needs to get over fast. That's basically like on like plain terms. So that one, when we're doing it, we have very specific processes to help us get the most out of ourselves. Things like we need to start strong, and that's not just go as hard as you can. That's making sure your body's switched on so it can handle the power that you're putting through the pedals. And then I have to judge a gap and decide when I'm going to commit, so that we go in with processes and we try not to let our brains get too busy, because at a competition, when there's the noise of the crowd and there's pressure and the other teams, especially at the games, like the other teams were breaking world records in front of us and all we could hear was the announcer going, "New world record!" So you kind of got to keep your vision and your mind focused on that path. So yeah, that's that one. And then we do a race called the match sprint, which again is 3 laps. There's a bit of a trend going here. And there's 2 of you on the track and it's like a cat and mouse. And it's first over the line wins. But how you do that is very tactical usually. And you have to pick a point when you're going to deliver yourself in and basically get the most out of yourself and outwit your opponent. And then the other event is a keirin, and you follow a motorbike for 3 laps that gets about 6 of you up to speed, which is about 50 kilometres an hour. And then again, you battle it out for 3 laps and first over the line wins. So if you're confused about sprinting, it's usually 3 laps and first over the line wins. Wow. And then we have a time trial, which has now changed to a kilometre. But that's not in the Olympics. It's only in our World Championship format. But again, similarly to the team sprint, you have to go in with what you want to achieve in the race, keep that in your mind, and try and keep it simple. However, with the races where there's more than one of you on the track at a time, I think there has to be an element of trusting your instincts and fluidity and trying to stay in that moment, but also being aware of what's happening so you can react.
That sounds incredible. So if I get this straight, you really need a combination of, well, strength, obviously, so you can go fast. You need wit, so the ability to outwit your opponents. But you also need to be fearless.
Yeah.
Because going 50 Ks an hour...
Yeah, we get up to about 70 or just over at our fastest as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's the combination of it all. But like you said, that mental side is actually probably most important. Most of the work for us is done by the time we get to race day. And it's how well you can dial into what you've got on the day and how clever you can be.
Wow, incredible. Well, you certainly shone with your teammates last year, and not just with the Olympics, but then you went on to win the championships as well. And breaking how many records?
So we broke the world record 3 times at the Olympics, every single round, which is pretty cool. And then we backed it up, like you said, with the World Championships. So we're hoping that world record's going to keep ours for a little bit of time, because the world record before was... I think it was 8/10 slower than we ended up getting on the day. That day was like it happened before we were kind of conscious that it was. It was a bit like a dream, and the way we executed and stuff like that was like almost like we planned it and then it happened, and then we realised it had happened after we'd won, and we were like, oh,
that's just incredible.
What's happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then MBE this year.
Yeah.
Fantastic, just to top it off, but I'm sure there's a lot more to come. And is it down to your success? I mean, how much is it down to Team GB and the support that you get and the kind of training that you're able to, get into now?
Yeah, I think there's this team, the women's team sprint specifically, has been a massive project for a lot longer than people are aware of. The last team sprint we had at the Olympics was in 2012 because we didn't qualify for Rio or Tokyo. And I've been part of that development squad. There's kind of been like 2 different squads. We have like the old squad and there's a massive gap. And then there's the rest of us. So my teammate Katie's the only rider remaining from that older squad. And there's 6 years between me and her, and I'm almost the first of the next generation. So that kind of illustrates the gap that we had to fill and overcome. And it's been a massive team effort from the riders themselves, but also from the staff and the support to get us to the Olympics. And it's funny because 3 years ago now, the conversation was still about just qualifying. That was some people's goals. I mean, within the squad, we all still want to win. We always want to win. It's not really a matter of just getting there. But it's really funny how quickly it went from, we want to qualify to, we want a podium to, we really want to win. And there's a lot of people behind the scenes that you don't get to see as well who've been a big part of that journey. But we wanted that, and we changed the culture, and obviously it's paid off.
And who was the team to beat at the Olympics? Apart from yourselves, of course.
Well, you'd say the Germans. So they had won the World Championships for I don't even know how many years before. They were the reigning world champions. They'd pretty much been undefeated until 2025. So they were like a big team on the cards, and then the other team is China, so you can't ever really count them out. If you look at the last few Olympics, they're always on the podium. I think they might have won from London onwards. So they were. You can't ever count them out, even if you haven't seen that kind of form in training or in racing. But we started to win at Nations Cups the year of the games, and that gave us that little bit of excitement of, this is becoming a reality now. So Well, that's such an achievement. It's so wonderful to see the women's cycling really evolving. And you were saying to me earlier on, actually, that you feel that the reason, I suppose, the women's cycling now is more prominent and women are doing not only better but having longer careers is because there's a different approach to how, women train now. Can you tell us a bit about that? Yeah, definitely. So when I first joined the academy programme, we call it the podium, which is the team that goes away and competes, was one big squad. So the women and the men were all in together. And so, as you can imagine, the coach would give similar philosophies to everybody. However, I don't think, well, this is my opinion in hindsight, that was necessarily the best for everyone. Some people thrived off it, but some people just didn't seem to find anything. And I think that since we separated the squads and we've had some really good coaches come in who've been quite attentive to what we need and how to work with us, and there've been questions also asked around our menstrual cycles and how that has affected us. For instance, our squad had a big incidence of lower back pain for a really long time, which was keeping people from training. And the physio team worked with the staffing team and did this big project, and all of a sudden we went from losing many days to I think we lost one within a year after this big study, because women are more likely to have like ligament strains in certain points in their cycles, and this research just hadn't been done before. Wow. And then because we could train more and we had like individualized training that was helping us make the most of that, I think that's when our progress started to almost exponentially increase. And I think that's been a big part of why us as a squad have got better. But I think that's basically worldwide now, like the force that women are coming through with, because they've got things that are designed for them and they are also getting the attention that they need, is huge. Yeah. And I think it's almost just the start, because I think you reap the rewards of that further down the line. Like, it'll just be a domino effect now.
And you know, it makes so much sense to understand the woman's body before you put her through that kind of training. And the fact that we didn't have those studies before really is mind-boggling. Now, speaking of the body, it's something we talk a lot about, and that's the benefits of physical activity. Now, you may or may not be aware that this is something we talk a lot about at Breast Cancer UK, that when it comes to breast cancer, being physically active, regularly physically active, can reduce our breast cancer risk by around 20%. Is that something that you were aware of, that statistic?
I knew that being active was good for you, obviously, and would reduce, but 20% is massive. Like, that's a much bigger statistic than I would have anticipated, which is quite powerful when you think about it, that you've got an opportunity then to almost fight back 20%, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think that's a really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing you say, because what we talk about at Breast Cancer UK is we know that around 30% of all breast cancers can be prevented. And knowing that there are certain things that we can do to actually reduce our risk is so important. Do you think that this information should be more widely known? That women, well, firstly, do you think women are aware that things like physical activity can help reduce breast cancer risk, as well as other things? And do you think we need to do more to get that information out there?
I think people are aware being, as you would state, fit and healthy is good and better for you and can help prevent. But I don't think women would know how much of an impact it has. And I think even like I didn't know it was that much. So, and I'm involved in sport, and maybe that is my opinion, maybe skewed a little bit, but I think it would be great if more people could know, because I think the biggest barrier is that first step into sport. And if somebody needs a motivating factor that could be, oh, you're less likely to get cancer. And currently, cancer statistics are quite scary. It's 1 in 2, isn't it, or something, I believe?
Well, for breast cancer, it's 1 in 7 in our lifetime, but they're higher for cancers in general. And for cancers in general, around 40% could be prevented through a range of things. And physical activity is part of that. Yeah.
I think it's. Yeah, I think the conversations need to start getting more open and out there, because I mentioned earlier to you before the podcast that, like, I have a massive proportion of my family that have had cancer, and a lot of them are fit and healthy. And if you think about that, like, they're already doing stuff to try and prevent it, and it's still caught up with them. My auntie was a firefighter. She's actually one of the first female firefighters in the West Midlands, which is a really cool thing. Like, she went and passed all the tests and went out there and did something that a lot of people didn't think that she could do. And later down the line, she still ended up getting breast cancer. And she was very fit and healthy, and she's beaten it now. And she's amazing. Like, she's still doing sport and loving life and things like that, and doesn't let it stop her at all. But if she could prevent it, I'm sure she would have chosen to.
Oh, of course.
And how do you know?
And not all cancers can be, all breast
No.
cancers can be prevented. Let's be clear about that. But understanding that there are certain things we can change can have really positive impact on our general health. And actually also, when a breast cancer diagnosis happens, like the case is with your aunt, then staying physically active and having a healthy lifestyle can help reduce risk of recurrence as well. So, but yes, we don't know. But what we do know is that there are risk factors that we can change, and we certainly can't prevent all breast cancers. That's for sure.
But I mean, if someone said you've got a 20% more chance of winning the lottery if you played it after you didn't run, you'd go and do that run, wouldn't you? So.
And then alongside, you've got loads of other benefits as well. That's the thing, you've got immediate benefits as well associated with physical activity. Now, the thing about physical activity for most people is, how do we motivate ourselves, And obviously you operate at a really, really high level. You're under a lot of pressure. You mentioned earlier on that, you're always thinking about like not being kicked off the team. I imagine that's quite a high bar. How do you stay motivated at this high level, especially when the margins between podium positions are really slim? You mentioned your dad kind of millisecond away from getting that medal. How do you stay motivated?
You don't. And I know that's a very strange answer, but you try and find motivation everywhere you can. And I am very motivated, but on top of that, I'm committed. So the motivation is the first instance. It's that spark. And when you find it, it's fantastic. And training with massive motivation every day would be a dream. But believe me, I don't get out of bed every morning and go, oh, I know what I really want to do today, train all day, hurt myself and come home. I think I'm motivated by I want to win. I'm motivated by I really want to achieve my goals in the sport that I have and continue that legacy. I think that's a big part of it. But I also have goals. I'm motivated by joy and the joy of riding my bike and the fun I get from that. And then I think that's the foundation that then I am committed to those goals and I am committed to striving to keep finding that motivation. And I think then that's what keeps me waking up in the morning and going and doing that really hard gym session or going and like riding in the rain and things like that. Motivation is kind of a gift, if you ask me. But we have this thing, it's like a psychology tool, and people use it in sport quite a lot, but it's what's your why? Why are you doing it? What's the reason? Because there are times where you're like, you don't want to do it, and if you don't have a why, life's too short, like don't do it. But if your why is go and get fit, or your why is to go and have some fun or to try something new, that's what you then try and attach that motivation to, and then the commitment comes off the back of that.
That's great. That's a great piece of advice, and I'm hoping people will hear that, because actually, I was going to ask you if you have any specific words you can share with our listeners about that, but because what we hear a lot of is people who have a desire to be physically active, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know where to start, and having a why. Deciding to yourself, well, I've decided I want to be physically active. Why do I want to do it? And then reminding yourself of that every day.
Yeah, definitely. But sometimes it's not even the easiest thing to find your why. You have to go and find it first, and that's almost the first step. Because then, like you say, people forget and get caught up in how they're feeling in the moment, and it's that little trigger of, why am I doing this? I know why I'm doing this. Okay, I'm going to take that step out the door. I'm going to put those running shoes on and I'm going to go outside and things like that. It's that first transition into doing it, and that little tool can help you just get over the edge.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, and I suppose the other important thing is the what. So you want to get fit, let's say, you want to be physically active, you want benefits, but you don't really know what you want to do. And, cycling, I love cycling myself. I'm not a competition cyclist, but I will cycle everywhere. And it's something I would love to see more women involved in, not just like at your level, but just generally jumping on a bike to get from A to B type thing. What do you think some of the barriers are to women getting on bikes, and how do we overcome that?
Yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about, and I'm hoping to try and... There's some things going on that we're trying to encourage more women to get on bikes and kind of just join in. British Cycling have actually just launched their new strategy, which is finding the joy of cycling. And that is about getting people on bikes and finding that joy in some areas, because cycling is a very sociable sport. So has a big magnetizing interest because of that. But I think one of the barriers is going out on the road is quite scary at times. Especially if you're in a city, there's a lot of traffic, and it can be really daunting. And I think infrastructure is a big barrier. So it's finding then a place where you can go ride your bike and enjoy it. I'm really fortunate that I live on the edge of Manchester, and if I go in one direction, I have the lovely Cheshire lanes, which are nice and quiet. And yes, I have had some run-ins with close calls with cars, let's put it that way. And I'm a professional cyclist, so it can be quite scary. But there are groups now, and when you're in a group, it's much safer on the roads. And there are now starting to be more and more specific women's groups as well on the road. My friend actually runs one from a coffee shop near me. And it's women specific. You all turn up at the coffee shop, go out on a ride, have a lovely chat while you're doing it, as long as it's not too fast, finish the ride and have a lovely coffee at the end of it, which I think is a lovely idea. Another barrier is that being on your own, and it's a lot easier turning up with a friend, isn't it? I think that's another aspect that's quite tricky. And I think the final one is equipment. Things are really expensive these days.
That's a big barrier.
Especially bikes.
Yeah.
After COVID, there was a big boom because everyone wanted to go out on their bikes in COVID. Yeah. But then the market never really settled. And then we went through Brexit. So parts are more expensive now to bring into the UK, which I think is a shame. And I hope there's a way that we can find a way that people can have access to bikes again. Because riding a bike could be as simple as riding to work. But if you're scared to go on the roads, or you don't have the equipment that's going to be not breaking down on you and things like that on the way in, it's really tricky. But I'm really enjoying seeing the growth of these women's rides and getting women on the club run at the weekends and things like that, because I love cycling for all of those parts of it. But
so you've seen that change? You've seen more women kind of coming and joining groups and riding?
Yeah, definitely. I think it kind of, there's this obviously big trend, we call it a trend, of the run clubs recently. And I feel like that's kind of leaking out into bike ride clubs and stuff like that. And I think I love about bikes is it doesn't have an impact. There's a less of a barrier if you can ride a bike with the physicality. Yeah. I think running can be quite tricky because you have to run at a pace, and you don't get if you're struggling on a bike, you can sit on the back of the group or slow down. Yeah. If you're struggling on a run, you're struggling on a run, and you're going to have to stop. Which is quite exciting if we continue to see that growth and that social side as well. I feel like women thrive in those environments, and you can have a chat much easier while you're riding a bike than you can when you're running. So if you're listening, go join a bike club, because
it sounds
it's
brilliant
great
advice.
Yeah,
because it is fun, as you say, and it is so social, and it feels safer if you're in groups. And
yeah, definitely.
And I suppose you depend on your group, don't you? You work within a group with your teammates, and so does that help with your motivation as well? Just being with others, having that social opportunity as well.
Yeah, definitely. As we mentioned earlier, I'm also very competitive.
Right.
So being in a group is great, because if we were doing a training session, I can create almost like a mini competition in my own head. It doesn't have to necessarily be an actual competition to help me find that motivation. But there's also that, well, they're doing it and they're working hard, so I'm going to match that. I'm not going to be the one who's not pulling my weight or anything like that. But I also think there's a subconscious thing of, if someone's working really hard next to you, you're not just not going to work. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're probably going to try and work that little extra 10% and join in. You're not just going to sit there and do nothing. It's like the reason why people go and work in a library together. Yeah, they're not necessarily sitting there going, you can do this, you can write that essay or anything like that. But because they're surrounded by other people doing a similar thing, they find that extra motivation and they find that commitment because you're surrounded by like-minded people. And I think that's quite a powerful thing. And that's what I quite like, that we get to train as a team up in Manchester.
Yeah, it's great. And then, that might create opportunities as well to talk about things that are important to you. Things that come up for us a lot is, we talk obviously about breast cancer prevention, and a lot of our audiences are older women, rightly so, because that's when our risk is more likely to be high. Well, it is higher when we're older. But for many young women and also for men, talking about breast cancer is just not a thing, because they don't really feel it applies to them. Why do you think it's a good idea, actually, to start taking control of our health today and to talk about these things and be prepared for them?
I think it's huge. You have power when you can talk about something, and you have ownership and a greater awareness. And I can't directly relate it necessarily to breast cancer, but a few years ago we started having conversations about periods. And it was those conversations which led to bigger conversations, which led to breaking down barriers, which now it's not a taboo, or it shouldn't be at least. But then that's then led on to bigger things of more studies going into the women's cycle, and just because we could talk about it. And like the power, you've got power because you're taking ownership of your own experiences. And I think that applies everywhere. So I think it's really important to talk about health and your bodies and everything you can, because that connection, somebody else could either prompt you in the right direction or say, oh, well, actually, I've experienced this. Or maybe you should go see a doctor because that's not normal because I haven't experienced that, instead of it all living inside your own brain and never getting to either share an experience or learn from somebody else or like express a concern. So I think it's, speaking about things like that is so powerful. And I think we should do more of it.
I agree entirely. Well, look, that brings us to the end of our questions about you, but we do have some kind of standard questions that we ask all of our guests, and I'm hoping you'll indulge us. The first question that we all love to know is, what is your biggest guilty pleasure, if you have one?
Ooh. Depends what you deem as a guilty pleasure, I guess. Does singing in the shower count? Because in my head, I am amazing when I'm in my shower. Outside of that, maybe ask my teammates.
You don't sing outside the shower?
No, never.
Not while you're cycling?
No. As much as I'd like to be good at it, I don't think I am.
So that's your guilty pleasure, singing, but you won't share it with anybody else?
Yeah, let's go with that. Or dancing. I like a good boogie along as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of partying after you've done all your hard work.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now, do you also have some recommendations for our listeners? They love to hear about any kind of personal recommendations. If there's a book or a podcast or a film, anything that's inspired you that you can share with us.
Yes. So I read this book called The Expectation Effect, and it's all about the power of your mind. And I think this is why speaking things into existence is quite important. But it's a book that encapsulates a concept of kind of a bit like the placebo and how powerful your brain is. And basically, you have the power to determine a lot of things. But it's written with case studies of different examples of different parts of the book, and actually gives you kind of advice on how you can take advantage of each of the instances.
Wow.
But it was really influential because it showed how true you have control over your own life. And I've tried to then influence my life with it a little bit. But one of the case studies was about somebody who had really bad ocular migraines, and to the point where they went blind.
Ooh.
But they weren't medically blind in the sense that their eyes and that system didn't work anymore. Their brain was protecting them. And so with a big, obviously, medical team, they managed to convince the brain that it was fine and it was just protecting itself from the ocular migraines. And within 8 months, that person was able to see again. And if that's how powerful your brain is,
that's incredible.
On that medical level, think about how powerful it is if you can train it to believe certain things, and things like getting over illnesses and injuries quicker, and that mentality. And I think, especially if you relate it to cancer, that's why mentality is so important. And I think that's why sport and getting over an illness can be so closely related, because that health and mental positivity and striving towards something, there's a reason why a lot of sports people see a psychologist, is because the brain's so important in getting to that end result. But I also think that's applicable in recovery and things like that. So yeah, it's an amazing book, and I 100% recommend reading it.
Remind us the name.
The Expectation Effect.
The Expectation. Do you remember who the author is?
No.
The Expectation Effect is quite a unique name, so I'm sure we'll be able to find it.
Yeah, if you Google it, you'll see it. It's probably the first one that comes up.
What about your plans for the future? What plans do you have? Do you have anything on your bucket list that you want to tick off now? Or is the next few years, is it really focused on some specific things?
Apart from, I still want to cycle. So that's plan number one. But I want to travel more. But we travel a lot with our job. But I want to do a lot more on my own as well. I recently went to Costa Rica in my post-Olympic break and had the best time. Made so many friends, travelled on my own.
Wow.
Seeing new things, new cultures. So my next place that I kind of really want to go is New Zealand. So that's my next thing I want to tick off is I'd love to do...
Lots of sheep there.
Yes, definitely. I want to do north to south. That's on the plan. But I just want more experiences. I think having had my experiences with grief and things like that, plus the COVID situation in my early 20s, I kind of just want to go and have a lot of new experiences and try new things and be in the moment a lot. So yeah, I feel like travel goes
you've got
with that.
time to do that in between your competitions.
Not a lot of time, but we do at the end of most years get a bit of a break, a few weeks off. So I'm trying to take advantage any time I can.
Brilliant.
But when we go to races and stuff in new places, we'll be like, please can we go explore for a couple of days? So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, look, enjoy your adventures, and it's been really lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to following all of your successes.
Thanks for having me.